Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. You're here for a city council meeting, and it is Monday, March 20th, 2023. We'll start the meeting with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Nordstrom. Here. Solomon. Here. Roberts. Here. Stroman. Here. Armstrong. Here. Jones. Here. Lehman. Here. Ham. Here. Evans. Here. Roseland. Here. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the invocation, and this will be by Dale Barcher. Following the invocation, we'll have then the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. It's been wisely said, all good gifts come from God above, and all good people come from South Dakota. I think there's some truth to that. Let's pray together. Almighty God, you are the ruler of nations, and in your providence, you guide the course of world events. In your wisdom, you have established civil authorities such as tonight's city council, and have given us the freedom to elect our leaders. Your Son, who is King of kings and Lord of lords, has instructed us to give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. Your word furthermore instructs us to pray for all in authority, that we may lead peaceful and tranquil lives in all godliness and devotion. We ask you, therefore, to bless and protect all who govern us, and specifically our city council, our mayor, their staff, and their family members. We pray not only that they will walk in the way of salvation, but that their decisions and policies may protect us, our community, our families, and our future. We pray all this and so much more in the name of the one who is the same yesterday, today, and forever, the Lord our God. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Would the council have a motion? Motion to adopt by Solomon. Second by Nordstrom. All in favor of adopting this agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item number 1 on the agenda, under presentations, we have a sustainability award, which will be given by Scott Kenner. So if you all could come up.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here representing the Sustainability Committee of the City of Rapid City. Before I make the award, I'm going to put in 2 clicks. The committee has been working very strongly with Western Dakota Tech and the Urban Exchange Network through Germany, and are putting on 2 really good sustainability project programs at the Earth Day Expo on April 26th and the home show. We will have a booth there on exciting new sustainable technology. With that, the City of Rapid City's Standing Committee on Sustainability is honored to present Dan Driscoll with the West Dakota Water Development District with the Sustainability Award for 2023. This has been published, but basically, if you've ever been up to Star Village, I spent a lot of days up there growing up and different things, and it's just a solid shale slope and pretty erosive, and it's been donated to the city as a park. Through Dan's leadership and funding support from West Dakota, a lot of volunteer time, it has been reworked, stabilized, a lot of planning and erosion stability has been done up there. The pictures are just night and day as to the grass that's growing back in there and the reduced sediment load that eventually ends up into Rapid Creek. And I would say it's primarily due to the leadership of Dan. Thank you, Dan.
Congratulations. Let's say a few words.
Well, I'm happy to accept this on behalf of West Dakota, and especially on behalf of all of our volunteers. Pretty much everything we do is volunteer efforts, and without them we would really accomplish nothing. Scott was a little too generous. There's actually probably 90% of what needs to be done remains. So if anybody knows people who need a place to volunteer, tell them to get a hold of me because we can use help. And one last thing I'd like to do is recognize Phil and Yvonne Wager, who donated 14 acres there to the city for this future park area. Since their donation was made, they've still continued to donate. They've got a tandem axle trailer that we used to haul all sorts of material in there. Last fall we were actually bringing in bags of yard waste from the drop-off sites to spread leaf litter on these slopes and try to hold them back. And then they've got a skid steer loader. We probably put a couple hundred hours on that last year, filling actually sleds with sediment that came out of Canyon Lake, dredged sediment mixed with compost from the landfills. So we're recycling a lot of stuff that really fits with the Sustainability Committee. They're a good group to work with, and so you know, Phil and Yvonne have really donated immensely to this. So thank you very much.
Next on the agenda, we have a presentation from Dr. Rich Bronstein on Journey On.
Greetings all. Hope you're having a good night. I want to start by thanking you all for inviting me back and to tell the story of Journey On. We were here last, I guess it was last April, so just around this time last year. I'm going to do my best tonight to humbly represent the work of now 16 outreach workers and supervisors who are out there every day. You probably see them in their green sweatshirts in the city vans and our own vans. And, you know, the presentation that I'm making tonight is really a way to articulate the good work that they've done. So I want to make sure that I give them the full credit that's due in all of what I'm going to present tonight. I'd also want to take a minute before I get started to thank our partners at the Co-Response Program for the City of Rapid City. I know some of them are here tonight, but not all. In particular, Joe Ryder, who's feeling ill tonight, wasn't able to make it here with us tonight. He's the coordinator of the Co-Response Program. We have a lot of partners in that program. You know, at the Volunteers of America, handling our housing, the Great Plains Tribal Leaders Health Board, helping us with behavioral health interventions. Of course, the Mobile Medic Program of Rapid City Fire Department and the Patrol Division of Rapid City Police Department are phenomenal partners for us as well. We have a lot of other partners that aren't formally named as part of the Co-Response Program, but, you know, Journey On is a collaboration. Collaboration between those co-response partners, the community organizations that we interact with on a daily basis, and of course those 16 wonderful individuals that wear that green sweatshirt every day. And also the folks that we're adding on in our new programs. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that, but that's really a function of 2023. This report is on our 2022 activities, the first year of our contract with the city. So I'm going to start talking about 2022. We'll talk a little bit about 2023 as I go on. The first thing I wanted to share with you all is the count of interactions that we've had. Journey On documents each interaction with each individual we come in contact with. Our street outreach workers are filling out what we call action forms every day for every interaction with every individual. The number 13,534 is the number of interactions that Journey On captured in its own internal data, and that corresponds very closely with the data that the ESCC, or Emergency Services Communications Center, we call dispatch, right, in our community, Pennington County Dispatch. They captured 11,379 documented interactions within the Zerker database system, and you can see that we started off with divergent records. You know, it took us a little while to get fully in sync with ESCC, which is where we're at right now. So you see around August, the numbers became identical, right? And so that's where we're at right now. I just thought I'd let you know that. We're going to talk mostly about the 11,379. The difference between the 13,000 and the 11,000 that you see on the screens is roughly the proactive outreach that Journey On does on the daily without calling that stuff in most cases to the dispatch operators. We tried to clean up our data the best we could to give you a sense of how many individuals, that is unique individuals, that we serve. We came up with the number of 3,005 individuals represented in the 13,000. Whoops, I didn't advance the slide over here. Sorry, everybody. So the number of 3,005 unique individuals is the breakdown of those 13,000 interactions that we had. You can see that from this slide, very few are extremely high utilizers of Journey On services. While I'll focus on 8 individuals using Journey On services more than 100 times in the year 2022, around 85% used it less than 5 times. So we interacted with individuals the most less than 5 times, right? The greatest number was the 57.9% that only used Journey On, only interacted with Journey On once, right? And we're going to talk more about those individuals because I think that that's a narrative that needs to be elevated here tonight. The folks that are not high utilizers, high frequency utilizers of city services or Journey On's resources, but the folks that we come in contact with that are just on the street for a first time, just becoming vulnerable in this way. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Okay, moving on. In terms of the current living situations of those individuals, we collected records from, I did it again. We collected records from 6,100 interactions, And we found out that, again, just over 50% of individuals are either living in emergency shelter or in locations that are not meant for human habitation. Those two location types or living situation types dominated our records. It was a little surprising for me to learn that 14% of those that we interacted with in 2022 reported having permanent housing. We do have a mission to serve those that are houseless, and so the data tell us that we're also serving 14% of folks that self-identify as having permanent housing. Moving on, the question of how long folks are houseless is another piece of data that we collected. Again, I want to highlight a narrative that may not be commonly discussed in Rapid City about houselessness, and that is 11% of those that we interacted with were on the street for less than a week or a month, right? So that is, again, not the common narrative. The common narrative that we all know is a persistent problem in Rapid City is the large number, the 53% slice of the pie, that have been houseless for over a year, in many cases 5, 10 years, right? But there's also that component of our community that is just becoming vulnerable or just on the edge of being houseless, and Journey On serves them and interacts with them regularly as well. I wanted to point out another surprising feature in this next slide, which is that about 770 interactions we had were with people under 24 years old. And that is a pretty big number. Again, maybe not a number that we are commonly thinking of when we think of houselessness in Rapid City. This number is so pervasive, in fact, in our community, that Journey On has just launched a new program in 2023 called STEPS, right, which stands for the Support Team Encouraging Perseverance and Strength, which is a funded program of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, right? It's a youth homeless demonstration program focused on those young folks in our community, ages 16 to 24. And so we have a dedicated team called the STEPS team focused on that cohort. And we have partners at the Wambly Scott Teen Center and the Circle, both teen drop-in centers with additional support resources. And those are our vital partners in this effort to kind of interrupt a cycle or even not allow a cycle to begin for some of these young folks that are vulnerable and exposed in this way. But our data tell us that, of course, we're very concerned about the frequency, the high number of folks that are in that group. As I said last year, a large majority of the relatives that we serve are Native. The majority of those are from the Oglala Sioux tribe, right? And like last year, a majority of those that we interact with are men, right? So those numbers I presented to you in a very similar way, and the additional year's worth of data hasn't changed that very much. In terms of the types of interactions that we have out on the street, and this is the way we kind of capture it through ESCC, like what call type we're dealing with. There's no majority call type, there's a plurality. The largest plurality is related to intoxicated individuals in the community. That made up 40% of our calls for service. 31% of our calls for service were bound by a welfare check or initiated by a welfare check, right? 27% were providing transportation support to those that are either houseless or, in some cases, non-ambulatory elders and others in the community that we provide, vulnerable community members that we provide transportation assistance to. And a very small number is other. And just to give you an example of like what other might be, I mean, some of our team went to pick up donations from community members that wanted to donate to Journey On. That would have been an other interaction type. Or if a police officer is involved in a drug-related incident and calls Journey On in support of their call for service, that might be coded other as well. Typically, we're not initiating other types, but we're coming into those as a result of our interactions. I want to give you a sense, like I did last year, I don't know if you remember this last year, try to give you a sense of where our interactions begin and also where they end, right? So if you look on this, and I know this is a very big list, but you hopefully all have a copy of this that you can look at on your own. You see that most of our interactions begin on the street, right? The Times Square Plaza, Imperial, Toby's Casino, McDonald's on East North Street. These are what we would call street locations, right? We're also talking about parks like Wilson Park and the Band Shell, These make up the majority of where our interactions begin, where we're called into the community to provide assistance for the houseless community. There's an awful lot of interactions that begin at housing locations further down, but they pale in the frequency to the street locations that are listed as the top frequencies, you know, in the top 5, 10, 15 start locations. Looking at the transport to locations, the next slide, it's kind of, you know, maybe a little surprising to me when I got into this work. I didn't think that we would be doing as many medical transports as we actually end up doing. But if you look at the top 5, the dominant location that we're bringing relatives to is the care campus, right? And this is not a surprise. I mean, there's not even a close second, right? So 1,900 trips to the care campus compared to the next highest frequency, which is 685, to the Hope Center, right? A service provider in our community we're all very familiar with. During the first part of 2022, when the Woyatan Church was providing a pop-up emergency shelter, we did a lot of interactions to them, but they also continue to be an emergency pop-up resource when the weather is most threatening, right? So Woyatan is in that top 5 also. But so is the Oyate Health Center and Monument Health. And if you look at the number of cases where we start or end at Monument Health or the Oyate Health Center, we're over 1,000 interactions at those locations, right, in the two-way context. So we're trying to grow our program in a way that has a dedicated medical and recovery-based transport capacity aside from our street outreach capacity. We're currently doing some fundraising outside of our current budget to promote and establish a dedicated program. Like we have a dedicated youth program that's already started. We're thinking and working on developing a dedicated medical transport program because so many of the vulnerable community members are not accessing health care, are you know, maybe waiting till things get very desperate or very difficult before they, you know, call for support. And we're going to try to intervene in that as well. Again, it's a long list of start and stop locations, but you can look at it in more depth. I wanted to spend just a minute tonight talking about what's not in the data. And this is important, I think, and so I'll ask for your patience and your indulgence while I talk about how Journey On is constantly being called by loved ones of community members that are houseless, concerned about their relatives. We spend an awful lot of time in case management, in resource navigation, and organizational collaboration. We have taken many calls for service from across the state, people trying to locate missing persons and reconnect them with their families and service providers, relocating their relatives, oftentimes to tribal communities through our private and organizational networks. But this last point, number 5, is a point that I think is very important to understand, that we consider ourselves at this point something of a safety net where all other public resources have been either denied or exhausted. Journey On finds itself on many times, you know, half-day calls for service with families oftentimes who are experiencing houselessness for the very first time. And we're trying to prevent these situations from becoming more dangerous than they already are, or even permanent, right? And in doing so, we hope that we are positively impacting the lives of those individuals and those families while reducing the utilization of public and private resources as we go. So these things are not captured in the data, but make up an awful lot of the core of who we are as an organization. We are there, right? And we like to be available to all who need our services. Within that context, I know a lot of folks in the city council has probably gotten complaints from folks in the community about, you know, how come we can't call Journey On? How come we can't get them on the phone? Well, I thought I would provide a little bit of data on how many phone calls, how many calls for service we actually get through our own individual phone system, which is, I think, our 3rd completely different version of communication software, because we're always been battling to try to stay up with the calls for service. I want to draw your attention to 208. 208 is the daily average of communications where people are requesting Journey On services to us each day. That's 208 requests for service that we receive through our communication system currently. Compare that to the 911 calls that are received by ESCC for all of the counties and agencies that are served by the 911 system in our town. 197 calls come into the 911 system. Now, that's a 911 system that covers 35 agencies in 3 counties. Journey On is one program, right? And we're receiving 208 requested forms of communication, requested calls for service to our communication software. Now, to be very fair to ESCC, the number 197 doesn't include the hundreds of non-emergent calls ESCC gets every day. If you add those in, it's 822 for ESCC and 208 for Journey On, right? But it's important to understand that the volume of our calls is so high. We have been battling, and some of you know about this because maybe some of your constituents are like, we call Journey On and they don't ever pick up the phone. Well, now, as a result of our 2023 contract with the city, we've hired 4 dispatchers, right? Where in the past we didn't have any dispatchers. So I would have never imagined standing before you last year with the idea that we would have 4 full-time communications staff working for Journey On. But that's what it's taken to stay up with this call volume. I wanted to give you one more piece of insight about these calls for service, and that is, of the 208, we average only 37 responses. That is, we send out an outreach team to respond to 37 of those 208 requests. A lot of the requests, 166, we are either don't fit in our immediate mission, or we're not able to as a result of priorities and kind of triaging the calls for service, right? But in all those cases, in all 208, including the 166 where we're not able to send out an outreach team, we're trying to provide, resources, referrals, advice, contacts, phone numbers. We've become quite resourceful as a kind of resource navigator for those 166 calls. These are all calls that these are interactions that we actually have. If you look back on the previous slide, I'm sorry, this is I keep forgetting to advance your slide. I apologize. This is the 166 I'm talking about down here. These are not the 166 calls that we're missing each day. That's only 40 calls that we're missing each day because of no messages or hang-ups. So people call us, don't leave a message, right? So we have data on that in our new phone system. These 166 calls are conversations we're actually having on a daily basis where we're just not able, because of the capacity that we have or the mission that we have, to actually send out an outreach team to respond, right? So I'm sure there'll be more questions about those kinds of communications later. We'll get to that in just a minute. At the end of the day, we're always compelled to estimate the value of our work. We're estimating the value to justify our city contract, to justify the model that Rapid City has advanced in this community to the rest of the nation. We have participated in a White House led program with 17 jurisdictions and 41 organizations, and we do this work together to try to assess the community-initiated response model. So here's what we've come up with. I've got 2 slides to talk about our impact. The first is in terms of dollars. If we look at the 11,379 calls for service that we took, that we estimate a large majority, upwards of 90%, would have been taken by police officers before Journey On existed. And we assign the value which this council assigned to our work when developing our 2023 contract at $132 per response. That winds up being $1.5 million worth of services delivered into Rapid City from Journey On's outreach program. If we add to that, excuse me, the 650 ambulance trips that were not taken because Journey On provided that medical transport, and we value that at the billable rate of $825 per ambulance trip, that's another $536,000. If you deduct the $150,000 contract which we received in 2022, that results in a net gain for the city of $1,888,000 worth of delivered services. All right, let that just sink in there for a minute, right? $1.88 million of delivered services. Now, I understand that there's no cash reserve on hand to reclaim that $1.8 million, right? Because that money is being reinvested by our, and this, by the way, only estimates RCPD and RCFD savings, or values delivered to those programs, if not savings, right? But both of these programs are reallocating their existing resources within their existing budgets to better serve their missions because of Journey On. And so I've just given these two quick tabular references to try to articulate that. In the first one, we see that in the first quarter of 21, before Journey On had this contract, and the first quarter of 22, when Journey On had this contract with the city and provided services within the co-response program, the RCPD patrol officers were able to do more focus on traffic enforcement, more able to engage in sector policing, more able to engage in downtown foot patrols, and more able to engage in housing checks than they were before Journey On was on the scene, right? In all, you can see that traffic stop enforcement increased by 96% in the first quarter of the year Journey On was operating in compared to the first quarter of the year prior to our existence. This is a huge reallocation or diversion into traditional and important law enforcement techniques that we are facilitating. We believe we are facilitating through our existence in the community. Similarly, RCFD, the fire department, and in particular its EMS capacity has been increased by Journey On. With the 650 transports that we estimate were done by Journey On that would have previously required an ambulance, the community is able to devote more vital EMS resources to the most critical medical emergencies throughout the city, not just in the north side where Journey On predominantly operates, but by taking those lower severity calls from Station 1 away from Station 1 and the mutual aid, I'm not sure what the technical term is, but the backfilling has to come in from all the other stations, and that reduces response time, that reduces availability of emergency response for the EMS resources. I believe that Journey On is contributing value in those areas, and that is again a statement of what I believe to be a tremendous investment in programs like Journey On, not only for our city of Rapid City, but across the country. This is a narrative that I think we'll be seeing in more and more cities. I want to end on this one point very quickly before I take your questions. When we went to the White House to represent Rapid City and this program in December of 2022, there were 41 organizations participating in that White House celebration of CVI, Community Violence Intervention organizations. We were one of 41. We were the only program of those 41 in 17 different jurisdictions that took direct calls for service through an emergency dispatch system. So I want to congratulate this city for trusting Journey On to do this work. I welcome your questions, and again, I thank you for re-inviting me and hearing me out.
Well, Dr. Bronstein, good job.
Did I make it under 15, Lance?
Yeah, it was right in there somewhere, but it was well worth it. My thanks to you and everyone who works for and with Journey On. This has been quite the experience, and I know we're early on in the data collection, relatively early on, but it's fascinating to see where the services, where the calls are coming from, and where the referrals are going to. And I hope that someday you or someone in your place will be able to stand up here and tell us how many folks we helped get off the street. But the dollar savings that you speak of cannot be appreciated any more than by our police officers who would typically be handling these calls. So that's a clear benefit. The secondary and equally as important benefit is that now these police officers can be free to go on their calls for service and do patrolling. Of course, right now, it's also helping us to get by in this time when we have an inordinate number of police openings. So that's very much appreciated as well. So good job, and hats off to everyone there. We have a couple of comments or questions. Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Really, I love the data, and in fact, I like it so much. Could you send a copy to all the council?
Absolutely.
I think it's really, really helpful for us as we not just analyze the value of the program, but also what we're doing in the other areas. Mr. Mayor, if I could direct a question to both the police and fire chiefs. We saw some data here about the calls for service in 2022 think 13,000 or so. Might want to get back, maybe it's 12,000, something like that. But my question is, they're taking a lot of calls for transportation and able to take it. Are we seeing the same number of decrease from previous years? Or is your calls for service decreasing because theirs is increasing? Does that make sense? Or are we seeing yours stay the same and theirs increasing? I'm trying to get a gauge here of what it's doing to our call volume. So let's start with our police chief.
Don Hedrick. Oh, there you go.
Thank you. Well, we've looked at that. It's a little bit hard to gauge because with COVID times and such, it threw off our call for service numbers quite a bit. One thing that I can tell you though is these 11,000 or 13, however you look at it, I can tell you most of these would have went to a police officer previously before Journey On was up and running. And you know, I spent some time with the doc this afternoon, Dr. Bronstein, and we were able to put together some of the numbers in regards to our traffic stops and such. And that's, you know, that proactive activity is something that we're asked for regularly. You know, I can confidently say, but because of these calls for service that they're handling for us, it's freed us up to be proactive. As far as year to year, it's a little bit deceiving because for us, COVID threw everything off.
Okay. Fire chief, want to weigh in? If Mayor lets you.
There we go. Much the same, but I can tell you that over the course of the last 6 years, our call volume's gone up 32%, if not a little bit more. That's conservative. And this last year, it was an all-time record high again. We only went up 9 calls. So 9 calls difference from last year to this year. I think, articulate that I can direct it back at the work that Journey On and our mobile medic program have done, along with law enforcement. What I can account for, which is a number probably much larger, is what they've prevented us from having to even get called to. And I think that I can articulate pretty well. And I think that is the decrease. We've been seeing 10% increases over the last couple of years. And I would say an increase of 9 calls, that was a big deal.
Okay. Well, that's great to hear firsthand from you. Obviously, we get a great value for the city. I think we all agree we want to be proactive on our public safety front in terms of policing, especially, and having officers focus more on criminal activity while we have others who can fill in the gaps. So thank you and your team. Obviously, they work hard. We see them all over the place. And also, I always want to give a shout out to President Lance Lehman for bringing this forward. Appreciate it, Lance. I think it's been a good service to the city. I hope we continue to improve it and get great data and be data driven with this program. I think that is always the way to go. And so thank you and your team once again. Appreciate it. I yield.
Thank you.
Laura Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Bronstein, thank you. Always a pleasure to see you. We appreciate the data and knowing how much money it's saving us, but I also think it's worth mentioning how we are dealing with the houseless community in a kind and compassionate way. For those that are not familiar about our street outreach team, can you just give a brief description of how they're selected and how they deal with the houseless community? It's not just me walking up to somebody.
Right.
Would you please share that? I think it's very important to have that insightful spectrum into this work.
I'd be happy to. We use what we call credible messengers. Credible messengers are individuals with lived experience in the work that they're doing. So it's not based on some certification or some education. It's based on how people have lived, how they've come up. Our outreach workers to a person have all experienced some degree of substance abuse, justice impacts, houselessness themselves. And if they haven't experienced it themselves, they've experienced it within their immediate families. So they've been a witness to, a participant in the activities that they're responding to every day. And this has a tremendous impact on the work that they're able to do because they have credibility. The de-escalating factor, I was just talking with the chief today about an anecdote, right, is what he called it, at Summer Nights, where there was a potential escalation on the very near horizon, and Journey On was able to step into that situation and within a couple of minutes redirect, de-escalate, and you know, divert people so that everybody could enjoy themselves and there was no negative impact to the interaction. And this happens every day. We are able to, through the work of these credible messengers, through these individuals with lived experience, we're able to do phenomenal work, and we're trusted, right? And we also hope that through our partnership with RCPD and RCFD, that works to create trust in those organizations as well. Because again, Journey On is a collaboration. We are absolutely not out here doing this stuff by ourselves. And the model that we're advancing of credible messengers is a model of partnership within the public safety sector. Right?
You just touched on three things. The credibility, moving forward, and trust, showing how that trust ripples out within our community, and then modeling it on a national level. When I was on the board, we used to have our success stories, and you just shared a success story as well. And it's just those little ones that happen every single day that make this city a beautiful community. One last thing, what is the wish list for Journey On? Maybe share the website, some things that they need.
Today?
How can
Right
this
now.
council and our community invest more into Journey On, because it helps us all?
So today, the issue of this question came up with our STEPS team, which is in its infancy. And all of our programs have restricted funding, right? We are reimbursed through both our city contracts and our federal grants to provide specific services. That doesn't allow us to have, I don't know what you'd call them, discretionary accounts, but we came up on a house that many in RCPD's youth outreach team know very well. These are the top line missing kids that are aged infants through 17-year-olds that are all living together without any adults. And they needed underwear and socks and personal hygiene products. So that's on our wish list, to have an unlimited resource that we could use carefully and prudently to provide those kinds of necessities to the adult and youth relatives that we interact with.
If you could send me an email with that request, I'll share this with our council and City Hall, and let's see what we can do and maybe ripple this out into the community.
Wonderful.
The STEPS program, again, what was that? The support team?
Encouraging perseverance and strength. And we are focused on 16 to 24-year-olds at STEPS.
Okay. All right. It looks like Journey On is growing growing. Sometimes there's growing pains, but we just keep moving forward. Thank you for the work that you do and you continue to do, and we'll do what we can to make this even better next year.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Pat Jones.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Some questions for Dr. Bronstein, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. Big supporter of the program from the day it was introduced, and I continue to be. I'm going to ask some critical questions that are not criticizing.
Understood.
Okay, let's make sure they're just questions. Your statement, you receive 200 requests for services each day, 37 responses go out. That's 18% response to calls, if I did the math correctly. I'm curious as to what you don't respond to. You know, of those calls, those 208 calls, what would you say, no, I'm sorry, we will not be responding to do this?
A relative asking for transportation from one residence to another residence. Oftentimes people who are housed who are asking for rides to work. We do try to support the 24/7 program for housed relatives. I know a lot of the 14% of those that are noting permanent residents, we almost always say yes to 24/7 because we don't want those people to be back in the system if they can't make it to 24/7. but if someone is housed and they want to go shopping or to work or to a medical appointment, we by and large, based on the limitations of our mission and our resources, we have to say no.
So the responses identified on that lengthy list that you showed us to Monument or other places are from a street pickup and then taking them to medical services?
Well, some of our programs, like for instance, VOA has transitional housing. If they're in that program, we're going to support them. We're going to support them to take them to the DMV to get documentation. We're going to support them when they need medical care and assistance. So people who are in transitional temporary hotels and motels, we don't consider permanently housed. So those folks, in addition to the ones you mentioned who are out on the street that need wound care or who are injured, would count as within our mission.
Okay. So, because that's a lot of calls denied per day for services.
I'd rather say diverted than denied, because we truly, I mean, this is a struggle. My team, they don't want to say no to people, so we try to say, you can get these services through the 211 network, or you can get it through a Medicare provider, particularly with our elders, right? Because there are Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement programs in Spearfish and in Rapid that, so we try to divert rather than deny.
That's what my first prom date said to me too, and that didn't work out very well either.
I'm sorry to hear
But,
that, sir.
I was going to ask then, what do you do if you divert the service? Then what do you do for the folks? So you give them other sources to go to for
Yeah,
service?
we give them phone numbers, contact information, program names, website addresses, whatever we can do to not say no.
Okay, great. And again, in looking at the list of places that you transport to, that list seems to be much, much larger than what at least I anticipated in the beginning as to where we would take people to and from. Can you comment on that a little bit more as to why I guess I don't see anything on here that you don't do as far as taking people. You pick them up from the street, take them to a medical provider, to either temporary or permanent housing, take them to shopping. Do you pick someone up at Walmart and take them home? Or
Well,
take
I
them
want to
somewhere?
say something about Walmart, because you can't underestimate the services provided. I mean, the Hope Center is listed in my data as a service provider. Walmart is listed as a business, but there's a pharmacy, there's a cash resource store, there are diapers, there is food. These are the essential quality of life necessities that are being provided at Walmart. I think that we have more Walmart pharmacy trips for folks to get medications than we have at Walgreens or other, the medicine shop. I mean, we can miss that about Walmart if we just look at Walmart as being some kind of frivolous trip for Journey On. Again, these are subjective determinations of our staff who are operating and picking up that phone to try to stick within our mission, but also have a big heart. We like to say have a heart for the job, but a head for the work, right? Sure. Because we have to have criteria, right? We got big hearts, but we also have the limitations, which is why we don't send a team out every time we get a call for service, right? We have 166 diversions compared to 37 dispatches.
Right.
Right?
And again, these are not criticizing questions, they're just.
Oh, I get it,
a
I'm just
critical
trying to
look.
explain.
You
Yep.
bet, absolutely, and I appreciate that, and I just have one more. As far as the calls being billed out, and the amount of what a police call would cost or an ambulance would run, do you bill out your calls at the same price as a police call, that $132 or whatever that was?
We do. Our team, you have to understand, our team is predominantly, high school educated, maybe not high school educated, justice impacted, some are on probation and parole still. And to think of themselves as worth the same as a police officer is transformative. So in our meetings, we talk about the value being the same as the value of a RCPD officer, because I think it elevates the legitimacy and the place and credibility of these individuals, these wonderful people that work at Journey On. I think it gives them a sense of, I am valued in the community. I am a member of this community. So yeah, we talk a lot about that $132 valuation.
And so each call that you send your folks on, you would charge out at that?
No, we charge out at pennies on the dollar, sir. the amount of money that we have coming into our program is far less than the savings that I articulated. And again, I'm uncomfortable using the term savings because I know that there's no cash reserve left behind, but that's the valuation that we use. But our budget is much smaller than that valuation. And keep in mind, sir, that that valuation of $1.88 million is only RCPD and RCFD. We're not talking about the savings that comes upon, you know, any other public or private resource in our community. That's only RCPD and RCFD. So if I went further to evaluate the savings of Journey On, that number would be substantially higher than the 1.88 million.
Sure.
But our budget is, we operated on a budget of, I think, $400,000 last year.
I've called Journey On several times when I've observed something that I thought needed their assistance, and I've stuck around to watch what has taken place. And every time I've done so, I've been very impressed with the people that respond, with how they deal with the people in need. So I think the service is critical. We need it very much in our community. I'm glad the city is involved in funding it. And we just have to keep asking these questions and making sure that we're staying within the scope of what was promised, what we advertise, and what, you know, what we tell the community.
What we bill for is the hourly rate of our outreach workers. Each of our grants and contracts results of like an FTE and how much that FTE is paid for. So we're not billing out at the rate that we mentioned tonight.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're
Thank you, Mayor.
welcome.
Bill Evans.
I just want to make a comment before you go. First of all, you are an outstanding speaker and spokesman for this group. It's really been very, very informative, and you're a wonderful speaker, so thank you. And I want to point out that, you know, as we get this new grant writing person on board, I hope we can take the opportunity. You mentioned that your model was different than everybody else's. Perhaps this, you hate to use the word franchise, but perhaps because you're different and we can start showing that nationally, this could be really a way to generate major funding for your organization and expansion of your program. So we really need to keep an eye on that before somebody else does it and gets all the credit. Maybe the credit should be going to you guys. So we really need to keep our, you know, eye on the prize for there, because this is really something that could become a national model. So thank you very much.
Can I say that the credit is really to this community? Because, I mean, Journey On started as part of the Police Department's Collective Healing Initiative in 2018, which was funded by the Department of Justice's Office for Victims of Crime. You know, to hand over public responsibility to a community-initiated organization was a risk that this city had to engage. And so Journey On is honoring that risk in its work every day. But the credit, I think, is to Rapid City. And when I go to the DC or I go to other national conferences, I presented a paper in Chicago last April, people are like, wow, who would have thought Rapid City is doing this progressive, innovative work? And I intend on continuing to tell that story.
Thank you. Laura Armstrong.
Real quick, what is the website, please?
Okay, journeyon-rapidcity.org.
Journey
I got
on
that right.
dash Rapid City
Yes, hyphen, right, not underscore.
.org.
Journeyon-rapidcity.org.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Next is general public comment. We have one speaker form tonight. The general public comment is limited to 5 minutes, and we'll go to Annie Bashand. What did I say, 5? I meant 3. Sorry, 3. You just
No,
got demoted.
come on, I want 5.
I changed them.
Good evening. Hey, to Rich and to Journey On, congratulations. Great work. I remember when it all started. I remember sitting in the circle, and great work. Greetings, council and mayor. I just wanted to make a comment. I know last couple weeks ago, Ron Sassa was up here, and then Tonchi Weaver had an article in the newspaper talking about the upcoming elections. And I haven't heard anything from the council. I'm hoping that we don't. Changing the rules of the game of how we're going to elect people in the middle of the game seems ludicrous. And that's all I have to say about it. I really hope that people keep their heads about this and that we keep the rules as they are and we move forward. And I want to thank everybody for all that you do. Have a great night.
Thank you. Moving on to non-public hearing items, items 3 through 43. There are no speaker requests on these items, so we'll go straight to consent items 3 through 40. Would the council like to remove any of these items? Tracy Davis is removing item 28. Greg Stroman.
Number 9 and number 12, please.
Number 9 and 12, and Pat Roseland.
27, please.
Okay. If that's all, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of 9, 12, 27, and 28. Motion by Evans and a second by someone, Ham. Okay, all in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9. Authorize staff to advertise bids for Wildwood Drive Reconstruction Phase 2. Estimated costs $4,850,000. Greg Stroman.
Approve, and if I can get a second, retain the floor.
Okay, we have a motion by Stroman, second by Solomon. Go ahead.
May I address Director Tech?
Yes.
Dale, I know you've got pages and pages of projects, and you're able to keep them all straight, but I'm not. So can you kind of give us an idea of what we are looking for in the near future or the near term on this Wildwood construction? And then also I'll have the same question about the Sheridan Lake Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this is phase 2 of the Wildwood area reconstruction project. Last year we worked on Unadell, reconstructed it. This is multi-streets are included in this. This is a rural road section, so we are doing some utility work and then replacing this section as a rural road section. But primarily it's to reconstruct Wildwood Drive, approximately 1,800 feet. Vanishing Trail Court, Alpine Court, Greenleaf Court also. So those roads are included in this project. We will more than likely bid some of these as alternates, depending upon funding. Obviously with inflationary pressures, we'll wait and see where the bids come in, but we anticipate awarding the bid as we advertise it coming forward. And if you don't mind, I can switch to item 12, if that's sufficient information for Alderman Stroman.
There's a timeline to what we can expect for the coming year on these 2 projects.
Certainly, when we bid this project, it will get started this year, and we would anticipate that the majority of the work would be done this year in the Wildwood area. However, some of it would carry over into next year as well. The phasing of the project will be important. Obviously, Wildwood Drive is the major road there. We would anticipate having that done first and then working on the side streets as finish-up work, if you will. And then moving to the...
Let's vote on
Okay.
item number 9 since that's up right now. We have a motion and a second to approve item 9. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12 is to authorize staff to advertise bids for Sheridan Lake Road reconstruction, utility wall and sidewalk, breakout project, estimated cost $3,500,000. We'll go to Greg Stroman.
Again, I'd move to approve, and if I can get a second, retain the floor.
Second by Solomon. Go ahead.
Okay, Dale, same questions, please.
Yeah, as the title of the project indicates, it says breakout project. So we've had a project on the books for a number of years, a reconstruction of Sheridan Lake Road from Corral Drive to Catron Boulevard. In effort to try to get that project done sooner, we're doing an advanced project, and that is to move some of the utility conflicts that are inherent with any arterial road work. So that is anticipated to be done this year, and obviously with the school traffic there at Sheridan Lake Road and Corral Drive, maintaining traffic through that corridor is very, very important to the community. So this breakout project will give us a leg up for the project next year to actually do the road work. Most of this work will be done behind the curbs. There will still be some minor lane restrictions for some utility crossings and work such as that. However, just as the name implies, it's a breakout project to try to give us a leg up for next year.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve item 12. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 27, to approve the 2023 Arts Investment Fund Awards. Go to Pat Roseland.
I invited Jackie Dietrich. She's our executive director of the Rapid City Arts Council here tonight. And I wanted her to explain, maybe answer a few questions of how this assessment went out to the needs of the art community here in town, and just to explain all the exciting things that are happening with the Rapid City Arts Council since she's been involved. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Jackie Dietrich. It's nice to meet you all. I've been in my role for about 6 months now and finally feel like I'm getting my shoes tied while we're running the race. So it's been a great start. And I was over the weekend at a neighboring town about 3 hours from here that's known for its $15.8 million arts center. And you're looking over the Big Horn Mountains and thinking, oh, this view is beautiful, but they ain't got nothing on us. I'm so excited to be a part of the Rapid City Arts Council and to be managing the Adult Arts Center. In addition to the work for kids that we're doing for camps this summer, the 17 art exhibits that we're going to be doing representing regional artists in our community, adding to our permanent collection thanks to folks like Pat, looking into community development projects that we can be doing like sidewalk chalk festivals. We'll see if we can get there, or even just doing summer art nights and bringing our local businesses into the art scene and helping to amplify the economic impact of what can be achieved in our community. We're working on the 6th periodic economic impact study with Arts America that will show and recognize the impact of the arts sector in South Dakota, which amazingly enough is amongst the highest in the nation for any state. We have more people that participate per day in arts activities than any other state in the country. That makes me so proud to be a South Dakotan, 4th generation. So when I think about what we're doing at the Arts Council, so much of what happens is, of course, managing the Adult Arts Center, which I think is just an incredible resource. To have a public center that is focused on accessibility in the arts is very exciting. The opportunity to manage a fund of the people's investment into the arts is a substantial opportunity to really grow and amplify this impact in our community. I think what we can do to help provide accessible arts opportunities is what really helps to embrace the mission around a livable and a vibrant community that I hope to see as my children grow up here and as they have children of their own. So we had $170,300 in application requests this year for the city's arts investment fund. We had 17 applications. We put together a team of 16 professionals. Some of them are people who enjoy the arts. Some of them are people who have been professionals in the arts all their lives. But really to help us to, for the first time, evaluate the Arts Impact Investment Fund applications based on a rubric where we evaluated the merit of the application as well as looked at the city's cultural plan for how that rubric could really help to support the goals around cultural equity, around having enjoyment for, adding to the public recreation, which is a big part of this investment fund. And so that team then came back with the recommendations that we've presented today for the 14 organizations to be awarded the $100,000 this year.
Okay, thank you. Pat, were you done? Okay, we had a motion to approve by Armstrong and a second by whom? Lance Lehman. Okay, now we'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. A question for you to kind of put on your radar in about 2 years plus. We're looking at doing something with 6th Street. We call it the Promenade. And if there's some way we can get your support to do at the Promenade, basically it's the, I call it the Arts and Culture Corridor of Rapid City. So I just wanted to see if you could possibly put that on your radar for probably 2 or 3 years out, so.
Thank you, Councilman.
Appreciate it, considering that.
Growing the Arts Council's role outside of the four walls of the Doll is something that the board and I think, embrace as a vision for where this can go. So we're excited about that.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a motion to approve item 27. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 28, approve resolution 2023-008, a resolution levying assessment for abatement of nuisances. We'll go to Tracy Davis.
We had received payment on one of the properties. The first one actually listed in there, tax ID 66795 for Elizabeth Lind, so we need to have that removed from the resolution.
Okay, then we'd entertain a motion to approve with the one amendment. Motion by Jones, second by Nordstrom. Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us through the consent items. On to non-consent, items 41 through 43. There are no speaker requests, so we'll start with ordinances, item number 41. First reading ordinance 6564, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by Vicor for Black Hills Energy, a rezoning request from no-use district to general agricultural district for property generally described as being located at 3575 Skyline Drive. Motion to approve Solomon, second by Roberts. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 42, first reading ordinance 6565, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by Long Branch Civil Engineering for the holding company LLC for a rezoning request from office commercial district to general commercial district for property generally described as being located northeast of the intersection of Marlin Drive and East Minnesota Street. We'll go to Pat Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Move approval, and with a second, I'd like to maintain the floor, please.
Second by Nordstrom. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like Director Fisher to give us a little explanation of what the difference is as to what projects could go in this place with the different zoning, if I may.
Okay, Vicki Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a request to rezone half of a lot from office commercial to general commercial. The balance of the lot is currently general commercial. Office commercial as it stands today would allow for less intense commercial, office use, medical, a bank, but it would also allow for multifamily apartments. They are proposing to rezone it specifically to allow for a a long-term stay hotel, so that someone could come in and potentially stay a week instead of just a night. That actually is in alignment with our future land use plan that shows this area as appropriate for general commercial and not office commercial. So it aligns quite well.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's all.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor of approving item 42, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public Works Committee item 43, approve request from KLJ Engineering on behalf of owner NDN Holdings LLC for a variance to waive the requirement to install sidewalk along Country Road and deny the variance to waive the requirement to install sidewalk along Haynes Avenue per city ordinance 12.08.060. And this item was continued from the March 6th city council meeting. Move to approve. Motion to approve Lehman. Second Jones. All in favor of approval say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing items 44 and 45. There are no speaker requests on these items, so we'll go to consent public hearing, which is also 44 and 45. Oh, sorry. Dale Tech.
Mr. Mayor, I believe we have a couple folks in the audience that did want to speak to item number 43.
Okay, we can go 43. Okay, we'll just go backwards for a second. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Murray Lee. I'm with Indian Collective. I'm the Director of Community Engagement. I'm here with Dana Foreman with KLJ Engineering.
Can we get those mics turned up?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, okay, I'll do it again. Murray Lee from Indian Collective. I'm the Director of Community Engagement, and I'm here tonight with...
Dana Foreman with KLJ Engineers.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for your time, and I just want to say thank you to City Council and to the Mayor. I'm here to speak to item 43. I know, as it's written now, the recommendation is to approve with the variance to waive the requirement to install a sidewalk along Country Road, but I am asking, and will provide justifications, and we have provided justifications as asked by the city engineers, to also request that there's approval for the variance to the waive the requirement to install the sidewalk along Haynes Avenue at this time. There is a plan, and it has always been a part of the plan to have sidewalks installed along Haynes Avenue. My request for this is because according to our timeline that we've put together for this project, it just does not make fiscal or logical sense to install a sidewalk at this time along Haynes Avenue for this project because it would cost several $100,000, and by the time that we need to connect to infrastructure and sewer, we'd have to rip it up. And there's a lot of engineering costs and functions that have to take place to install it at this time, and that would all have to be undone. So it'd be money that would just be out the door, money that would be spent and then lost, in essence, by having to rip it up in a few months. So if you would like some more technical assurances based on our project, Dana could provide some, I guess, more detail on that.
And I guess we apologize we wish we would have volunteered to speak before you voted to, hopefully we can clarify a little bit. I do have some documents, if I can show them on the overhead.
Yes, we'll have a point of privilege from John Roberts.
Thank you, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I have a question for our city attorney. Since we've already voted on this, how do we handle that if we decide to go back and make your recommendation? Because you guys should have came up and put in a speaker request form so we could have heard you before we actually voted on this. So we're out of alignment with the way the process should have been handled.
Joel Landine.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you would have to vote to reconsider it. Normally, sometimes I'm concerned later in a meeting when you vote to reconsider after everyone who's interested is left. But I think that in this case, probably the interested party is obviously still here. So if you want to vote to reconsider it, that would be, in my mind, the proper motion to make to take it back up if you decide you want to do something different.
Thank you, and I just wanted to see what the process would be because this is very, very strange. I've been on the council for 12 years and I've never seen this happen before. So I just wanted to make sure legally we had a process to be able to do that, to be able to even listen to you. So thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you for that clarification. And I apologize where I thought we would have a chance to speak during the comment period of the voting part of it. So a little bit of context for the project itself. The upper part of the page you can see is Country Road. Country Road is here on the page, going left to right on the upper part of the page. And that upper L-shaped piece is what we call phase 0. And the owner intent is to apply for a building permit relatively soon in the next month or so for that portion. That's going to be a temporary school is what that's going to be with some permanent infrastructure there. Once the children are in the temporary school, that gives a chance for some of the rest of the greater part of the master plan to be designed and under construction in the years to come, where the permanent school is kind of this area here. And once the permanent school is brought online, then all of a sudden the kids can transition into the permanent school from the temporary school. And then eventually the temporary school goes away and then becomes some permanent housing in that upper corner. Also, as part of the master plan, on the lower left part of the project, we're looking at some multi-use apartments and some other retail. This intersection here is Northridge and Haynes. Haynes is north-south on the page. And that was our request, was to not install sidewalk at this time on Haynes. The owner fully intends to install sidewalk on there, just not with this initial phase where our intent really is to install the sidewalk in roughly 2025 is the intent with that other construction. Those of you that are familiar with this area, there's a large drainage that runs adjacent to Haynes and then kind of goes northeasterly. Our concern is that it's going to take a lot of engineering to determine what sort of conveyance elements are needed to reshape that drainage, pipe some of that drainage, also the engineering of Northridge intersection. So whatever sidewalk we would install today, there'd be a large portion that would have to be redone in the near future. That is fully intended to be done in 2025. So that's the request. Is the intent is really to build the sidewalk in the future, just not today.
John Roberts.
Thank you, and I'd like to make a motion to reconsider item 43. And you can call me and I'll give you all the information you need on the process, because you needed to fill out a speaker request form. We have no idea who wants to speak on any item. So, do we have a second?
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to reconsider item 43. Second by Bill Evans. Okay. Then we'll go to vote on item 43 to see if we will reconsider it. Okay. Pat Jones.
Thank you very much. This has gone through Public Works. The whole process has been done. This is the recommendation from Public Works. The opportunity was here to present, and I think it's improper for us to be even acting on this since the vote has already taken place. And we need to follow the advice from our Public Works unless there's something blaringly wrong. I would assume that you shared all of this information with the Public Works Committee, and they had an opportunity to hear it, to process it, to come forward with the best recommendation. So I don't think it would be right for us to just on a whim overturn all that work that has taken place. So I will not be in favor of reconsidering this. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to reconsider item 43. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Roll call, please. Oh. An aye vote is in favor of reconsidering item 43, and then we'll hash out 43 if that passes.
Jones?
No.
Lehman?
No.
Solomon?
No.
Evans?
Aye.
Roseland?
No.
Nordstrom?
No.
Ham?
No.
Roberts?
Aye.
Stroman?
Aye.
Armstrong? 4 yes, 6 no.
Okay, so item 43 will not be reconsidered then, so the vote will stand. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
John Roberts.
Thank you very much. I just want to bring it to the attention of the body that they did not bring this to Public Works. So this was the first time the Public Works members had a chance to hear this. So that's another part of the process that was dropped. Even though you're working with Public Works, you didn't bring this forward on the Public Works meeting. So.
Engineers asked for assurances, we provided additional information, additional assurances in good faith, and
I was ready to hear it. You know, I'm just saying that you missed on the process. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
All right, now to non-consent, or to consent public hearing items 44 and 45. Would the council have a motion? Motion by Jones to approve, second by Nordstrom. All in favor of approving 44 and 45, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 46 is the bill list, and we'll go to Interim Finance Director Tracy Davis.
There are no additions or changes to the bill list, so the total presented to you is $8,853,423.80.
Motion to approve Solomon, second by Jones. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Motion to adjourn, Jones. Second by Ham. All in favor, say aye. We're adjourned, everyone. Thank you.
Because that in here.
That's on there.
Because, yeah, we did not know anything about the scope of this project last week.
You're paying $1,000 for a first engineer, shouldn't he know the process for our city?
Yeah, probably should.
Yeah, that's too bad.